We're looking at a worksheet called Combination. And if you look at the data in columns A, B, and C, imagine a company that has a small fleet of vehicles, and every month they track miles driven and miles per gallon. So without giving the data too much thought and clicking within it, and because it is surrounded by empty cells and worksheet boundaries, we don't even have to highlight it. We can quickly create a chart with Alt F1. And right away, we begin to recognize this is not the best chart here because we don't see the miles per gallon. And because the range of numbers here is so wildly different, the magnitude of difference between these numbers in the tens of thousands and these numbers in the 20s and so on, they're not showing up on the chart. But they could be. In older versions of Excel, trying to create what we call a combination chart where we could actually show both of these sets of data intelligently was not so easily done. I'm going to press Control-Z to undo this chart. Now, you might not be aware of how we could approach this, but let's say you were a little bit concerned about what chart might be best here. Start at the Insert tab, possibly go to Recommended Charts. And as always, you want to scroll up and down the list, and the first choice doesn't look so good. The second one is just what we had seen, and some of these others aren't shaping up so well either. The one at the bottom looks a little bit different. That's called a Pareto chart. That doesn't seem to work either. Let's explore all charts. Now, if you don't know what kind of chart, at first you wouldn't necessarily drift toward the choice called Combo. It's at the bottom. And the first choice there doesn't look so good. We've got three other choices, but the second one surely does. Now, as you look at this, the one thing that's different from most of the charts you've probably been working with is that the x-axis on the left side is accompanied by another axis on the right side. The one on the left side is referred to as the primary axis. The one on the right is the secondary axis. And this is actually showing both sets of data together. And we can see below that miles are represented by clustered column, miles per gallon represented by line. We have other options here that we could pursue. Some of the choices would be kind of ridiculous, but this looks pretty reasonable. Let's click OK and see what we've got. And I think you could make a case for saying, yeah, it all makes sense. We see the legend at the bottom. Along the right-hand side, we see different numbers than we see along the left-hand side. So it's pretty apparent that the columns are representing miles, and we read those off the left axis. The orange line represents miles per gallon. We're reading that off to the right. Now, if for some reason you thought it would be better to use column here, you could click the line here and just the line, and you could go to Change Chart Type and make that be a column. I don't think that would be a good choice here, but you could do that. And now we're back to the fact that we don't have the two axes there. Not a great choice. Now, there's one other concern here, and not a major one, but you'll notice how the grid lines are keyed to the left data. Depending upon the range of information that you have here, this may or may not cause the lines always to line up just perfectly. In other words, we see a number to the left of this line, and we see a number to the right. Is there any correlation between these numbers? Not really, and sometimes it would be almost a strain to make that happen. But if you double-click the right axis here, and you might have seen in earlier movies how we've done this at different times with the left axis as well, we can change the upper and lower bounds. So one thought might be all the miles per gallon are above 19 or so, so let's just start it at 18. So we can make the change there. Click on the next panel, and you'll see the change in the chart. Now, that might or might not be better. It looks like we don't go above 23 in any of the miles per gallon, just slightly in one of them. So 24 maybe looks okay. But if we do that, on the one hand, and I'll close this dialog box, the numbers don't quite line up with the lines. I don't think that's critical in this case, but sometimes you might want to consider that. On the other hand, if you wanted to make these numbers range from 0 to 35, maybe that would match up with the numbers to the left in the sense that they'd be a ratio of 1 to 1,000. So try that option too, possibly. So make the minimum 0 and the maximum be 35. And we see that possibility. I don't think that's as good in the sense that the line doesn't show much variation, but just different thoughts on how you might display these. The key idea is that rather than trying to set up a chart like this manually, the combo choice possibility, dealing with different sets of data with magnitude of difference in numbers, allows us to easily create charts like this, a combo chart.